All right. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Hilary Wicht. Hilary is a longtime friend, and I met her because of I attended an event where she was a speaker, and I was in awe of what she was talking about. She was talking about your voice and how you project, and she was also talking about the what you're thinking and how it affects how you speak. And Hilary is a longtime coach, presence coach, mindset coach. She really dives into neuroscience, and it's really fun to hear all of that she shares, and really take it in and think about how that applies to you, the inner game, the outer game, and all of that. It's Hilary is, really quite an expert in that. And besides that, she's a damn fine person. So Hilary, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Christy. Good morning for most of us. I think there might be some people in New York, but it's still morning technically there. I wanted to come on today, and the format for today's conversation is that I want it to be a conversation. Everyone on here is maybe in the same spot in their career trajectory, their career cycle. Maybe there's some differences. I'm not sure, right? I'm just coming into this group. So what I'd like to do is I want to kind of take a temperature read on the group. As Christy mentioned, I coach on leadership, communication, psychology. And so my breadth of reach is quite large. And what I want to make sure that we're doing in the next hour is making sure that this is excessively valuable to you. And in order to make it valuable to you, I want to know what is up for you right now. So I know on the on the invite, we talked about the inner game and outer game of interviewing, which some people might be in, confidence, right? What does executive presence look like? Last time I was with you, I did a session on what is executive presence over virtual channels, now that we're all in this world of extending our executive brand over virtual presence. I can talk to you about a lot of different topics, but what I want to do is take a couple of minutes for everyone right now to put in the chat, why did you show up this morning? And what is the 3 biggest takeaways that you would love to get out of this investment of your time? So that way I can start diving in on some of these topics. So please go ahead and take a moment to put that in the chat. Okay, so I would say just by, general swoop of the chat that interviewing is the top, interest of the group. So I'm going to go with what has the majority there. And then it looks like also some inner game, outer game of confidence, but then also a little bit of how we are doing this in a virtual world. So I'm going to blend all these things together. What I want to invite is that if you have a question, if you need refinement, if you want to maybe even, add a comment, just jump in. You don't need to raise your hand. If it gets out of control, I'll put some guardrails on it, but I want this to be engaging. And like I said, I really want you to get value out of this time. So I want you to be participating. I want to make sure that what I'm having to say and share is clear with you. Okay. So let's talk about the interview. I'll just start with a general observation that I have for most individuals. So many of us go into an interview already in a one-down position. We are looking for that external validation. We are saying, my God, I need this money, or my goodness, I need this position because for whatever reason. But we're usually going in with a already sabotaged relationship to the dynamic of the conversation. And I really want to offer a reframe to that. I know it's hard sometimes to convince ourselves, but we need to be able to truly understand the value that we're bringing to an organization or to a possible role that we are interviewing for. So one of the things that I really want to encourage you to do is take some time to really get clear on what you're bringing to the table, not from just a technical perspective, but also from a personal perspective. So one of the things that I see so much with the brilliant people that I work with is that they've spent tons of energy and time working on their technical skills. They know how to potentially talk about the various initiatives that they've driven, some of the data and statistics that they've been able to produce as successful outcomes. They don't spend nearly as much time understanding how to talk about those things in ways that actually come across and land, instead of just like, well, yeah, I did this really quickly, right? And that's that inner game of confidence. We're trying to rush through some of these really valuable data points that people want to hear and people want to feel our confidence in. And then the other thing is personally, what are you bringing to the table as an individual? Leadership style, teamwork, etc. So before you even start to take interviews, there's all of this preparation that I want to encourage you to explore, and creating alignment in your own self before you start to go in to create alignment regarding yourself with someone else. So again, what does that look like? One list is, what are all the technical things that I am skilled at? What was the ultimate result that I'm able to produce with those technical skill sets? One thing that's interesting for us to note here on the call, my background is also in sociolinguistics and studying communication and how gender communications differ. When we're usually dealing with male of center communicators, they often are able to track, resonate, respect, and retain data. So numbers, statistics, facts. That's not only what they recognize, it's also what they have more experience putting out there. Female of center communicators like to tell more of a story. They like to use adjectives to often describe some of the results that they've driven. Both are great. We want to make sure that depending on who we're speaking to in our audience, that we are giving them the information that they need in the ways that they need it. So if I'm maybe talking to a male of center communicator, I want to make sure that I'm bringing in some of those data and statistics. When I can say I increased revenue for this particular organization by 30% in a timeline of 2 years, which allowed us to I don't need to go into the story. Right? I don't need to tell you, I'm showing you. But what's wonderful about that is if I'm coming in with those data and statistics, and then I can tell a little bit about the how if they want to go into it, then that starts me to be able to weave this really nice narrative about, here are my results and the badassery that I bring to the table. And here is my personality and what helps to drive that. So you're creating this whole package, and instead of becoming this one-way street of them asking you questions and you just giving out data, or them asking you questions and you going kind of on a tangent about how you enjoy leading people and what you're doing is you're creating a nice tapestry of both results and relationship that then is allowing to stimulate a conversation to take place. Okay, so going back to that list, really get clear. What are your technical skill sets? Give examples of how you've leveraged those technical skill sets. And this is really critical, and the ultimate results that they've produced. Because I could say, I'm a seasoned executive coach. Okay, well, great. I don't care about that. Tell me what you've done. Give me some markers that let me know, that tell me that you're an executive coach, right? Or if that show me, not just tell me. And then you also want to make sure that you are then pivoting the conversation to say, and I would love the opportunity to leverage some of these assets in the role of X, Y, and Z, because I know I could be a valuable partner to, any information that you might have about the company or about the role. Oftentimes, so there's a little bit of an art when you're interviewing. I want you to be thinking about, if someone asks you a question, again, what, biggest thing, ultimate result, how it matters to them. So this bow on how it matters to them is important. Literally almost after every single question that you answer, before you're done finishing, I want you to say, and I would love to leverage this skill set in the ways of, and the more specific you can be, again, the more data that you've got about the company or the role, or maybe some of the pain points that they're facing or some of the goals that they're wanting to drive, the better, because that individual that's hearing you is going to start to using a little bit of what we call NLP or neuro-linguistic patterning. They're going to start feeling and hearing that they are being seen, that you understand the issue, and that you're almost already in the fit. And that very well might not be true, but because you're able to use language like, I know we can do this, I would love to be a part of our growing this for your company. Inserting some of those joint or collaborative words is a really cool NLP way to let people know that you're already in with them. And that's one of the things also too, when you're interviewing, is I really, really want to encourage you. People don't know how to conduct interviews. Just because they're the executive, it doesn't mean they know how to do this well. So don't assume that. They are going into this just as blindly sometimes as you are. Or they might be doing it and they're like, gosh, this sucks, right? Or they could be saying, my God, I have to fill this role. You have no idea what their temperature is until you start asking questions. But I want you to think of interviews as a conversation. And, we have some coaches on here on the call. I want you to think of this as, how can I provide value to the other person that's on this call right now? How can we talk shop? How can we talk shop and relate it not only to the skill sets that I bring to the table, but how those skill sets are going to be leveraged to help them get what they need? So I ideally want people to be getting off of an experience with you to say, man, I actually learned a lot from Earl. Or, Tina had some great questions. Far too often, people are going into this mentality of interviews where I'm just sit there and I'm supposed to answer. And I'm not supposed to take up too much time. Crap. No, wrong mindset. Right. You are there to interact. You are there to engage. You're there to tease out. You are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you.
Hilary,
so, yes, go ahead. Jump in. Yeah, Angela.
When they don't respond, after you're trying to tease things out, questions, what's your pivot from that? And then I had a second question.
Yep. So similar to what I did this morning, Angela, I said, I want to make this the most valuable use of your time. In order to do that, I need to know what's going to be most valuable for us to talk about. So if I see that I'm having trouble getting someone engaged, I might say, all right, I might not say this, but I could say it this way, like, all right, but I would really love to make sure that we are getting the most value out of our conversation today. So I'd love to learn what really is up around this role, or what are we really trying to solve for? Let me know some of the things that have worked. What hasn't worked? There's a bunch of questions, and Tucker, maybe if you can find some of those collaborative conversations, that slide, and just pull that up in some way, shape, or form for us while I'm talking about it, that would be helpful. And you can also put it in the chat so people can perhaps download it. But there's ways to be mining for this information that not only is allowing you to get the intel about the individual, about the role, but you're also establishing that rapport and relationship. So again, I always go back and angle it, Angela, to, hey, for me to make this valuable, for me to help you get what you want, I need to ask these questions. Now, I might not say it in that way directly, but again, look, I want to make this really valuable. let's talk about what's been working or what's not been working. Tell me, and this is a great way to start, Angela, if you could wave a magic wand, who would be your ideal fit for this role and what initiatives would be driven? That gets them started. And sometimes, Angela, they don't even know. And even that process then allows you to say, okay, they're not even sure. I might be able to steer it. And then you're really in the driver's seat. Go ahead. You were going to say something, Angela?
Thank you. I run into that a lot. They don't know.
Yeah. They think they do, and then you might go through an interview process where you've had, 6 interviews, it's extensive sometimes. And then they're like, well, we ended up going with something. And you're like, if you would have told me that you needed that, I would have taken myself out of the running a long time ago. But it's a discovery process for them too. And so that's what I want you to think of. Yes, there's a performance going on there, and we'll be able to talk about that, but it's also a discovery. You have to engage. And the more that you can control the narrative by bringing up specific questions, again, always coming from the place, because some people will say, gosh, well, I feel rude doing that, or who do I think I am, or isn't that going to create some offense? All of this is contextual. Good communication is nuanced. So there's no always one way or always wrong way, right way, wrong way. However, I want you to think, I am here to help this person, to help this company get what they need. I am taking a stand to help this company get what they need. That reframe really helps people who are not used to putting themselves out and saying, I'm getting what I need. And especially if we're coming into the interview in a one-down position, that can help to take off some of the, I hope they like me enough. I hope I've got what it takes. No, I'm here to be in a conversation with you. I'm here to see what value we can produce for each other in this next hour, in the half an hour. And I want to make sure that I'm touching on those points that are going to give the biggest ROI in our conversation. And in order to know what those points are, you're going to have to mine a bit. Okay. So that list of technical skills, the results that they've produced. And then you want to have some specific examples, some stories that if the conversation starts going that way, you can bring them into the fold. So that's where the data and the story, the show and the tell, both start to weave this really nice comprehensive tapestry around how you're showing up and speaking up and standing in your value. The other thing, like I said, is after every time you answer a conversation, you bring it back to the organization or you bring it back to the person, and you try with as much specificity as you have available to yourself to say, and I would love to leverage this asset for you. And I know that we could do that by way of X, Y, and Z, or maybe it's just X, but that bow is important because it means that every time you finish an answer, you're reinserting, and I can do this for you, and I can help you this way, and we're in this together, whatever language you want to use to kind of start already creating that container of collaboration. And I'm already working with you, man. I'm already working with you here. Questions about that so far, or comments, additional comments?
I have one.
Yeah.
So I think there's another important thing to remember, and this is from my own experience as a hiring manager. A lot of times what people really are trying to find out, or one of the most important things to them, is whether you fit in the organization, from a standpoint of
culture,
personality, and chemistry.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a conversation, they don't know. If you're just sitting there answering questions and being stiff, then people don't. And I think, I know that was always really important for me, maybe one of the most important things. I think a lot of hiring managers don't even realize it, but that's the most important thing to them too. Because if you don't fit in the organization, none of your skills, your talents, your experience make any difference.
That's totally right, Brian. Yep. Amen. For sure. That's exactly correct. And that's why it's important to weave in these components, because some of us might focus too much on the personal and the culture, right? Others might not focus at all. We've got to have both to create that comprehensive, like, yeah, that person feels good, right? They feel solid, well-rounded, etc. So yes, I totally agree with that. Go ahead. Nope. Go.
So I just had this experience where I actually took myself out of the running for a position, because if you're doing this right, you're vetting them as much as they're vetting you. And so there was a point in the conversation where I said, well, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're looking for X, Y, and Z, and it's not really my skill set or my interest or where I feel like I fit, but I might know somebody who I can introduce you to who might be a better candidate. So if you're approaching it sort of more on an equal parity, then you should be equally at home or equally comfortable saying no at any point in a conversation, and not proceeding and not waiting for them to tell you no.
Yeah, you are here to find a mutually beneficial win situation. So you are not in the one down. You are, if you can really try to bring yourself to that place of like, look, I'm going to be an asset to this organization, and they're going to be an asset to me. And in order to do that, it has to have a certain fit. It really helps to level the playing field. The other thing that I want to tag on to that, Charles, is that sometimes, and it goes back to like, sometimes they don't even know what they need. They might be saying, oh, I need a product manager. Well, if you start asking, you say, okay, tell me about what's currently going on. Tell me about what you've tried. Tell me about what has worked, what you'd like more of, what isn't working. Tell me about what that person would be doing ideally. And you might say, well, that's interesting. I do see that as part of a product manager, but I also see that as part of, and you can start having conversations, because they might then say, oh, that's interesting. I never looked at it that way. And you said, and my skill sets could serve in this area, this area, this area, this area. So just again, coming from that place of, we are here to have a conversation, to help, to take a stand, to help that person or that organization get what they need. And it takes us out of a little bit of that I have to perform, and instead I'm in a conversation of service, which helps to reframe for some people. Other people don't need that reframe, right? And when I say that place of service, I also really want to be really very, very clear. I've talked about one downing. You need to be able to stand in your value. That's what we're talking about here. Owning your contributions and standing in your value is different than peacocking, being cocky, and, going off the narcissistic train. Very, very different. So owning your value, knowing what you bring to the table, and saying, and this is how I would love to support you, knowing what I know with these skill sets. Okay. So that was the technical part and kind of how we answer some of those questions. And this is high level again. So if we want to double click on any of this, let me know. And I know Tucker has put my contact information in there. Feel free to reach out individually. The inner game stuff. Again, this is where you need to get into your zone. Every high level performer, athlete, artist, I was an athlete. I was both at very high levels. You have to have an inner game. Steph Curry can have an incredible shot, but if his mental game is off, it is not going to matter. So when we look, especially like athletes, they've got a team of people that are helping to curate that individual so that they can operate at their highest levels of success. And so often as individuals in business, we don't even think about that inner game stuff, but it's really important. And so for you, I want you to think about, what is a routine that I can start doing, not before the championship game. The interviews are the championship games. Those are the big things. But what can I be doing consistently if I'm in the interview process? What can I be doing on a consistent daily basis that helps me to get grounded, and that helps me to, again, stay connected to the value that I'm bringing? There's two things around there that I want to talk about. When I talk about being grounded, I'm talking about your nervous system. When we get into high stakes communications, whether it's an interview, presentation, whatever, the nervous system goes, and everything starts going at high speed. Our brain goes offline. All of this stuff happens. Before that horse starts to run down the track without you as a jockey on its back, we have to say, nope, I got the reins. This is my ride. And in order to do that, we can't just tell ourselves that. The nervous system is far too powerful for just a thought to make that switch. You need to be doing things with your body, because that's where the nervous system is residing, so that you can get grounded. And so, for instance, I might do a exercise where 5 minutes, I do a box breathing where I'm breathing in for 3, holding for 4, exhaling for 5. New science has just come out that actually the most effective way to use breathing to calm the nervous system is to breathe in as long as you can, take another little sip, and then let it out on ha. Now, I can advocate for this process an even little bit further. Not only are you being able to regulate the nervous system, but you're also stimulating those vocal cords that we're going to perhaps be about to use, but you can feel the reverberation of your own energy. You can feel some of your power. And I'm not saying you have to go like, right? Like, that's not what I'm advocating for here. But there's something to be said about giving voice, even if it's just a tonal voice and there's no words that you're using, to that process. Okay. So that's a couple of things around breathing. The other thing that I'm going to introduce to you on ways to ground yourself is what I call legs up the wall. And that is, you got a wall, and I want you to get your booty all the way up to you're going to lay on the floor and your butt goes all the way to the wall. And then you get your legs all the way up to the wall. This angle will immediately start to regulate your nervous system. Now, if you want to be an overachiever, like I think probably a lot of people are on this call, you can do legs up the wall and do your breathing. So now we're twofering, right? Honest to goodness, if you set your phone timer for 5 minutes, really honestly, no more than like 12, you're going to start to regulate your nervous system. I also want you to then be thinking about, so if my nervous system is dysregulated and I'm ungrounded, there's no way that anything I tell myself new is going to stick. You cannot teach yourself a new skill. You cannot create a new thought pattern. It is a huge computer system that you cannot outthink. You have to feel. And that's why going with the nervous system and doing some of this breath work and getting grounded, going outside in nature, listening to some nice soothing music is really important. While you're doing that and laying the foundation for the nervous system, kind of creating my blanker canvas without all the like, oh crap, don't mess this up, Hilary. What do I, do I have anything in my teeth? Without getting all that stuff out there, then I can insert new thoughts. I cannot, from an inner game perspective, take away bad thoughts without inserting something new. Doesn't work. So I'm going to take away those inner critic thoughts. And what am I going to replace it with? Hilary, I might have a mantra that I have. You know your value. Hilary, you are going to provide worth. Hilary, you have prepared as best as you can. You've got this. So many of us have learned to motivate ourselves or to sometimes pump up ourselves through invalidation. Invalidation. Hilary, don't do what you did before. Remember what you did, blah, 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 blah. God damn it. Why did you? And that inner critic just starts coming on. And it's a really interesting phenomenon because we've been conditioned to think or to believe, or maybe we don't really believe it once we look at it, but it's our habitual tendency to start loading that on even more as we're getting into game time. You got to do the opposite. So think about if you had a friend that you were trying to support or a partner that was going into a high stakes something. You would not start criticizing them. You would not start picking apart some of their content. This is not the time to do that. You should have been taught, if you really wanted to help them, you should be preparing for that 2 weeks ago. You want to be building yourself up. You want to be a cheerleader for yourself. You want to motivate yourself through validation, not invalidation. And that could be a really different mind shift for a lot of people, because we're so used to thinking that, hey, what the hell, if I'm going to get better, I got to know where my blind spots are. Yes, but you don't continue to poke holes in the blind spots on your own volition. And that's what ends up happening. We end up creating these conditioned systems where we say, okay, that rejection from whatever experience felt terrible. So instead of allowing that to ever happen again, I'm going to catch myself first. I'm going to punish myself the hardest. And what ends up happening is that balance becomes really imbalanced, and that I am doing what I call shoulding on myself so much that I have no positivity to keep me going in a balanced fashion. I actually get paralyzed by the inner critic. So I really want you to be thinking about, after we've talked about, grounding and doing these things for the nervous system, what am I putting into my brain? How am I cheering myself on? And it's got to be something authentic. I'm not going to say that that has to feel normal, because this is a new behavior for most of us, perhaps. And so nothing new is going to feel normal. That doesn't mean that it's right or not right, right? So when you're doing this, it can't be like, you got it, Hilary, or like, hey, you're the best, Tatiana. No, it has to be authentic. But look, Robert, you've got this. Cindy, if this is meant to be the right fit, we're going to know. All these different things that you can be coming up with as things to put in your brain instead of the attacking, instead of the invalidation. I want you to motivate yourself through validation. Think of it as, again, what you would say to a friend if they came to you and said, man, I'm really wigging out about this.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
This reminds me of actually sometimes the simplest way to get to a concept. I'm kind of scientific, and so I see what you're saying, because in college, if I studied for an exam in a way that was sort of like an inner battle, like, you didn't think of that yet, you got to go study that, you got to go study that. I usually didn't perform as well, but when I closed the book and then read like a comic book or laughed or went to bed and just thought and forgot about it, it was better. I had friends for our first organic chemistry midterm in college. They brought a boombox with them and played Eye of the Tiger on the way to the place to take the exam. They probably did a lot better than someone who was like, oh, so many reactions, I got to figure everything out. I never thought, it's kind of funny, I never thought about doing this for interviews, because it feels like school is different sometimes. But I think I understand what you're saying. This is interesting.
So good. Yes. Love that parallel. And you're exactly right, right? You're getting those endorphins going. You're getting the serotonin going. You're building up the confidence and controlling the nervous system. What happens is the nervous system starts to say, this isn't safe. Now, logically, we know it's safe, but the body doesn't know that it's safe, because it's like, I'm going to get grilled, or I'm going to get judged, or I have to perform. Most of us have pretty negative experiences with those types of adjectives. So you've got to create that safety. And oftentimes we're so desperate looking for the other person in the conversation to create that safety for us, that it's like analogy that I want to bring up that I use often. And Natalie, I see your hand. So as soon as I'm done, jump in. Okay. It's like chasing this red ball. I'm in some water and I see this red ball and I desperately want this red ball. So what do I naturally do is I start swimming towards the red ball. Well, then I look and I'm like, what the heck's happening here? The red ball's going further away. Instead of stopping, getting grounded, watching the ball, asking myself, maybe the red ball, a few questions, and positioning myself, I will often start to say, crap, I must not be swimming strong enough. I must not be not right. And in that not rightness, not only am I getting out of my integrity and connection with my confidence, my nervous system is spiking up, and I am desperately trying to create some type of external validation from that red ball that I'm getting closer. Did I answer it right? And as I'm doing that, I'm leaving myself And that red ball is going further and further and further away. So I want you to think about this analogy as it relates to let the red ball come to you. It requires action. It requires inquiry, but it also requires intention and attention. This is not about you falling over yourself to get those external valid. You might be speaking to someone who is known for a complete deadpan and speaks in a monotone voice, and they say, okay, great. And you think, well, this is going awesome. Not. You don't know. You have to be able to start validating yourself and saying, I'm connected and I believe and I'm engaged and I am empowered by the information that I'm sharing with this person and how I can be an asset to them. And don't fall over yourself when you're not getting that external validation from that individual or from that red ball. Ground, watch, ask a couple questions. In this analogy, if I can read where the current is, if I can read where is the natural flow that this ball wants to go, I can position myself in the water a little bit differently. And all of a sudden the ball's coming to me and all I have to go is whoop, whoop. Thank you. And so a lot of this is about, I teach a lot about power dynamics. So much of this is a power dynamic, not in the way that we might be thinking about on the call, but you have to stay in your power in order to feel your power. And oftentimes we're giving that up as a way to get that external validation because we don't know how to give it to ourselves. Comments or questions about that? And then Natalie, let's go with you. And I can't see everyone's screen. So again, just jump in if you have something. Robert, I see you after Natalie. Natalie, come on.
Oh, Natalie. We lost her.
She's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I just had to share something that I found really, really powerful. I love that you said, Hilary, the Stuart Smalley approach doesn't work. You're wonderful. You're this, you're that. I've always hated positive affirmations. And in this workshop I did, to give credit where credit's due, the woman was Monica Roseberry. And I took a picture of the handout, and I want to share this for anybody who also struggles with anxiety. And the thing about doing the breathing or the legs up the wall, in this case, a tapping ritual, is saying the mantra, like you said, when you're in the calm space. And the way that she said to write this, she called it a goal statement, is so important. And let me just read it and then quickly explain. It's from this point forward, I choose to believe it is possible that I can, I am, I have, whatever. So in my case, it was, I choose to believe it is possible that I am hireable and I will find meaningful work. You figure out your statement, but the key thing about that is the inner critic cannot argue with it because you're saying from this point forward, so don't get on me about all my past mess ups. I choose to believe. So it's empowering, you're kind of, I don't know. And you're saying it is possible. I choose to believe it is possible. Like the inner critic can't argue that there's not a possibility you might get this job. So it has been a huge benefit for me to, before an interview, get in that, do this tapping thing. It takes 6 minutes, but I love legs up the wall. That's even better. And say that goal statement multiple times. And then there's another thing about having your eyes move around. So you're kind of swapping left and right brain. That also helps calm the nervous system. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. If anybody wants the little handout, I'm happy to share it. It's been a big help to me.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah. And the other thing that Natalie brought up is writing. There's a kinesthetic connection when we are writing. And writing is a form of giving voice to something. So I might think to myself these mantras, but what if I actually wrote it out on paper? And I would spend 5 minutes, maybe just repeating it over and over and over again, writing it. A level up from that, what if I was able to look in the mirror? And might get a little bit, small-ish on some of you, but mirror work is super powerful if it doesn't start the inner critic going on a rampage, but to look at yourself in the mirror and say the mantras. And the other thing that I really want to encourage you, I am a huge proponent of manifestation, and that's not what this topic is about today, but it is not so much about what you say, it is your feeling behind it. So really trying to find words that have authenticity for you that you can really get behind, because the nervous system works on emotion, doesn't work on data or vocabulary. So really feel it. I am going to find meaningful work. It's different than I'm going to find meaningful work. I am going to find meaningful work. I'm going to find meaningful work. I would rather have 3 or 5 really felt, present communications with yourself than 15 rote ones. Okay. And if we want to tap into inner critic, we can absolutely do that on another call, because there's a whole bunch of information that I can talk about, where it stems from, how we work with it, various exercises that we can do with it. Robert, you have something that you'd like to add or ask.
It's funny your comment that you just mentioned, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Too often we focus on everything that's going wrong and we forget about everything that's going right. And there's a lot more usually that's going right than wrong. And in the same way, that's my biggest challenge, being my worst critic. You forget it. You focus too much on the mistakes you've made, or the few mistakes you've made, but you forget about all the successes and wins over in your career. And I guess what I was wondering was, rather than just focusing on prior to the interview, what would you suggest on a daily basis or whatever to help deal with that?
Totally depends on what the story is behind the inner critic, where it stems from. So our inner critics, no one is born with an inner critic. Newsflash, y'all. We acquire them, and they are often developed by our predominant caregivers. For instance, I had a woman who, after doing some work with me, and we were talking, she was interviewing, and I said, "What does your inner critic say to you?" She's like, "I never thought about that." I'm like, does it have a mantra, right? And she came up with this saying that her dad always used to say. And she said, "Oh my gosh, my dad always used to say that." And I said, "Okay, that's interesting. So let's look at this inner critic again. Whose voice is that inner critic?" And she says, "Well, it's mine." And I said, "Okay." And here's what happens. We become so used to the voice that we start to kind of put this veil on it, that it does become our voice, but it's not. It never is. Again, no one is born with an inner critic. And after she started listening, she's like, and I might be actually telling this out of order. I think she said first, it's a male voice. And I said, "Okay, well, that's interesting, right? What is the male voice saying?" And then she said the thing that her dad always says. And I said, "So whose voice do we think we're picking up on here?" And she's like, "Holy crap, my dad would say this." And they're like Midwest people. And it was something to the effect that, like, whether you win or you lose, you're still a schmuck. And it was kind of this just, like really neutralizing, gotta work hard. That's what life is. And you do your best. But there was nothing empowering about it. And so she said, "Holy crap." And she had no issues with her father, but she said, "I have been adopting this. And of course I haven't been able to move forward." And so what we started doing is I also started working with her in some somatic exercises where I was like, okay, where does that voice live? Interestingly enough, most inner critic voices are over our left ear. So weird.
On the back.
Can I add something, Hilary?
Yeah, go for it.
So for people who don't know, a lot of what Hilary's talking about, these are all elements of mindfulness practice. So if anybody isn't familiar with that, it's something interesting to look into. But there's another really important thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, which a couple people touched on, which is that you can't just do it before, right? You've got, as somebody who is also an athlete and a performer, one of the things I've always said, if you're going to go on stage, right, whether it's a presentation or a speech or playing guitar in a rock band, or a lot of people feel like they're on stage when they're interviewing, you have to practice it until it's second nature. You can't be thinking about the mechanics of the next note you're going to play on your guitar, or the perfect swimming stroke, or how you're going to present yourself. It has to be second nature. So the way to do that, you practice it until it just becomes a part of you, and then you can forget it. And that's when it becomes fun to be on stage, because now you can just go act like a rock star, because you don't have to think about the next note you're going to play. And that's a really important part. And that takes practice. You have to do it over and over and over again until you know it so well you can forget it and then just have fun with it.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah,
Hey, Hilary, there's a question that I want to, because I think that this question applies to Can you speak about constructive things one can do as interview postmortems? So after the fact.
And is it after the fact? Postmortems is usually has a negative energy to it. Is that accurate?
After the interview.
I meant after the interview is when you're done with the interview and you're, reflecting upon how the interview went, whether it went well or bad. What are some of the things that one can do? Usually people will focus on negative things like I should have done this or should have done that. So what can one do to turn that into a constructive, positive thing?
Kind of the same thing that we've been talking about, and that, like, using this athlete as an example, the athlete has a warm up that they do to get into their mental zone and also into their get their physical body warmed up. They also have a cool down. Okay. And Brian is 100% correct. You cannot go into an interview with the same mentality that you should have been having in practice. An athlete does not step on the court and just start working drills. That's not the time for that. Drills and those mundane practices were early on. And the idea is that we're practicing enough that we say, gosh, I've done everything I can. Here we are in game time. Here we are in the interview. Those things they can be in your mind, but they need to be back in the mind. They can't be in the front of the mind. Now your focus is on the interaction and staying grounded and connected and calming that nervous system. That is your main areas of interest when you're in that interview process. So doing that thing before, but also after, is important, because you're creating this container, you're bookending the experience. And if I can create a more safer, positive experience for my nervous system to go through this interview conversation process, I'm going to be less and less scared of it moving forward. But we have to create that safety for ourselves. So in very practical terms, I would say the exact same things that you did before. Repeat them. Ram, I'm so like, way to show up, buddy. Hey, good job on that. Go ahead and make your notes of areas of improvement. Get them out on paper, not in your mind, so it doesn't start creating this negative feedback loop. Get them out on paper. Address them later if you know you want to and need to in a constructive manner. But as it comes to as it comes to the inner game, get back into the things that you're wanting to program yourself with, that you're wanting to see more of, not that you're wanting to see less of. Again, legs up the wall. Great job, buddy. Hey, sometimes all we got to do is show up. Whatever things that you want to start coming up with, to just give yourself kudos to going through this really arduous, usually unfun process. And it's not, it's not for your fault that it's those adjectives. It's just one of those things. So anything that you can do to really, again, if you are coaching your child, if you are coaching a direct report, if you are coaching your partner, hey, you made it to the gym. Good job. Yeah, but I only freaking lasted 20 minutes, blah, blah, blah. You did it. That's awesome. Something like that, and getting a routine down that you've got a warm up and a cool down, and then you've got this practice routine that you're utilizing in between will help to create more stability, build that stronger container, and create those ends on an experience, and hopefully start to shift it a little bit. specific questions? Is there more that you want to ask, or do you want to share more about your specific experience and I can give more specific insight?
No, I was just asking just in general. I tend to do postmortems or after action reviews or whatever you want to call them after interviews, just to, or after almost any activity, just to see like, what could I have done better? What did I do well? What could I have done better? I have 3 questions I ask. What went right? What went wrong? Sort of, or what went right? What could have been better? And what went weird? What was sort of
Love it.
neutral, or like could be positive, could be negative, not sure.
Great. So yeah, those are all very tangible, linear things that are important questions to ask. And I said, get them down on paper. They're out of your brain. I don't want them ruminating for themselves to start getting weird. But then from an inner game aspect, we want to create validation. That's our focus. The list that we just created, those are actionable steps that we will take in a constructive manner. We've got them out on paper. I don't have to think about it anymore. What I want to make sure, again, it's all about balance. What I want to make sure is, for just as much as I'm looking at the what went right, what went wrong, what went weird, motivation, validation. I've got plenty of opportunity. And again, it's our conditioned tendency to look at the negative. You don't have to worry about, so I think most of us don't have to worry about, man, I'm just not beating myself up well enough. That's not it.
Okay. We're about out of time, but there is one question about compensation. How do we deal with the compensation conversation? And it seems to be the toughest. So there's got to be some, something back there to have, this hesitation to discuss compensation.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is an exchange, right? And we are talking about an exchange in this conversation in the form of currency, value. If you can provide value, if I can tell you I cost $25,000, whatever, and you're like, what? That's way out of my budget. I say, okay, well, what are we solving for here? What is the cost of you not having that? If I can produce an emotional sensation around the value that I'm bringing to an organization, and I can say that the return on investment that you're going to give me for this compensation, I am going to be able to 3x, 5x, whatever. It's about the value. It's not about the number. So you have to be able to communicate that the value that is going to be produced is worth the compensation that you're asking for. Never, ever take what they offer you first. I hope everyone on this call knows this. You always want to negotiate. And know your homework, or do your homework, know your worth, know what the going rate is, ask some of your colleagues, keep in mind maybe how long you've been doing certain skill sets. The idea that the economy is tight right now, yes, we can have that conversation, but you're bringing me on at a time where you need me because things are tight right now. I'm going to actually be able to be a part of turning that around for you.
All about return on investment.
It totally is.
This is what corporations are all about.
Exactly. So this is going onto the tennis court and saying, hey, let's swing a ball back and like racket back and forth. Like it is, they're right there. It's bread with peanut butter and jelly. Like they are there. They know how to have these conversations. Don't put yourself in the one down position. It is just a conversation. It is about what is the exchange for the return on investment that we are going to get out of this interaction. And if you have your numbers, you can say, based on my experience and the value that I would be bringing to this company, the rate that the compensation, the rate that I would request is around this is in this ballpark. I'm open to hearing what you can do to match that, or what we can do to meet that. And you can negotiate all kinds of things. It's not just compensation, right? It's okay. If you can't give me that salary amount, how else can we get to creating a more equitable return on value if I'm going to come on board with you? And just stay in the conversation, always asking for information. Hold your line but be able to collaborate. And instead of thinking about, I have to drop down to meet them, no, what conversations do I need to have in order to create that value prop in between me and the company and bring them closer to me? That's how you want to be thinking about it. Again, don't chase the red ball. Do what you can to position yourself to have that red ball come a little bit closer to you.
Hilary, I love the conversation around value, because that's ultimately what they're hiring for, to cover that value. And it links so well to what you were talking about before, of making comments when you're telling your story to tell them why it's important to them. So you're just linking these two together. And I think it's a brilliant discussion today. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for all of your engagement and additional insights, Brian. Super helpful.
And we are out of time. Hilary, thank you so much. We're going to send out your contact information.
Okay.
Everyone, please follow Hilary on LinkedIn. She's got weekly video clips that she sends out, amazing content, and reach out to her if you're interested in having another conversation with her. And Hilary is truly a great coach and just provides so many insights. So we'll send out your contact information, Hilary. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time, appreciate your energy. And bye everyone. Have a wonderful, yes, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.